Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
My mouse died at like the perfect time. That was really, really great timing. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Wait For It podcast YouTube page for our live streams that we do from time to time. And usually we reserve it for, a Marvel or a DC film, something along those lines. And today, of course, we will be talking about the latest MCU film, Eternals. So, Eric, this was a movie that we were kind of unsure about. It was like a weird casual optimism, because usually when a movie is getting review bombed for really dumb reasons, it means the film itself is good. It's just there are a lot of ignorant people out there. But I think we kind of fell somewhere in the middle of this, so I'm excited to talk to you about it. And of course, as you guys can see in the in the title of this episode, it will be spoiler free. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, of course, it just came out today. That's okay. We will not be spoiling anything here today in this episode. So Eric, I'm excited to talk to you about it because I know we have a lot of thoughts.
We do. Positive or negative, I guess, is the thing to wonder here, because this is the weird Marvel movie that just is kind of here. It's not quite time for Spider-Man, but it also isn't early enough for to be Shang-Chi. So it's in this weird middle ground with all these Disney shows also, kind of consuming 2021 for us. I'm interested to see where we land. Unlike our My Hero Academia review, which you can listen on the podcast, where we were really polar opposites, I have a feeling this is going to fall under the norm. And I feel like that's becoming a trend for Marvel movies, especially the more recent ones. We've been pretty much on par on how we feel.
Right. So, yeah, you guys should definitely listen to the My Hero review if you are a fan of that series. Definitely go check it out. But if for any of you that are watching live, thanks so much for joining us. You can also leave comments on the video as well. We'll answer questions as we go if you guys have any. But Eric, before we get started, for anybody that is new here and is maybe rewatching, let them know how our movie reviews work.
So we keep it simple here at the Way Forward podcast. We go over our likes. We're going to keep it positive to start things off. Then we're going to segue over to dislikes before we get into our final thoughts. And of course, it wouldn't be a review unless we had an official grade. So from a scale from 1 to 10, because I think on the last one we decided there's never going to be a 0. Except for Bruno film, which I did think about it as we talked. Bruno, that was a 0, right? That's
I
the
don't
exception.
know why you would bring that up. We tried to actively forget the fact that we saw Bruno at midnight.
I didn't reveal those details. You just did. So,
well, you already had told everybody that we saw it. So now here we are. So
is it really worse because we saw it at midnight? Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, it definitely was worse because we saw it at midnight. So
yeah.
Well, again, spoiler free. So we'll take a few minutes to talk about what we enjoyed, and then of course, like you said, give our grades. So yeah, Eric, it's been a really weird year for Marvel because we have all the Disney Plus shows that came out, and of course everything took a year off because of the pandemic, and now they're trying to, we got Black Widow a year after we were originally supposed to get it. So it's been a weird ride for Marvel, and The Eternals is the quintessential 2021 Marvel film. I think it really explains how their year has been going, because at times it's really, really good. And then at other times it's what the hell is happening? That's essentially what this movie is. And I think our review will definitely reflect that. So we'll talk about, of course, positives here first. And Eric, we really can't go. We have to mention this first. In Kumail Nanjiani, who is one of my favorites, of course. You've heard me sing his praises for the longest time because of The Big Sick, which is one of my favorite movies ever. You guys should definitely check that out. Maybe somebody covered it on an episode of Netflix and Phil. You should find that episode. But Kumail Nanjiani, excellent, and I'm glad he's getting a lot more mainstream appeal with this film coming out. He, of course, went through that drastic body transformation where he's now shredded, like the Paul Rudd. Anytime someone joins Marvel, they all of a sudden get shredded. I don't know what the deal is, but Kumail Nanjiani, Eric, I want to get your thoughts on him because, of course, you were a little bit less familiar with his work. So I want to know what you thought because obviously we loved him so much.
Yeah, so whenever I do give my final score, I will tell you guys now, Kumail alone is half of the reason for that score. So whatever that score is, if I give it a 6, if I give it an 8, it's half. Exactly half is all him. He's so good, he's so amazing, and he's so funny. And like, I guess, Phil, we're a little biased because we enjoy his comedy, but I don't know, like, it was just very entertaining, and it's almost like it gave me that feeling. I know we all hate Chris Pratt now because he's Mario and Garfield and, off camera stuff. But it reminded me of that feeling when I watched Chris Pratt, as Star-Lord. And I was like, God, he's such a good fit for the MCU. He's so perfect. I hope he pops up in multiple movies outside of just dealing with the Eternals. And I'm super excited to see if anything else comes from it. That type of optimism was something I was hoping from this movie, and I did get it in the form of this character.
Yeah, it's a real shame that, and this is kind of getting like ahead of myself a little bit, and it's not necessarily a dislike, but like that character deserved more spotlight than it got. And the fact that he was able to, you know, make such an impact in the short amount of time that he was given is just a testament to how great he is. I mean, he is a great he's a great comedian. He's a great actor. So like you said, Eric, I definitely want to see more interactions between him and some of the other members of the MCU. I certainly hope that we get that. And you kind of get worried that he was going to get like lost in the shuffle in this giant cast. And if anything, like you said, he is the brightest spot out of everybody. And not to say that there weren't other good performances here within the film. It's just that Kumail was so solid that it was impressive that he was able to do that as far as him having so many different co-stars. So we had to start there, Eric, because of course that's the best thing about the movie. If I do end up seeing it again, it will be because of Kumail. So what else did you want to highlight as far as this film?
So first and foremost, right, and I think this will need to be referenced back to in our next segment, but the actors are good. Like, there is a solid cast here. I mean, you have Richard Madden, who plays that, and we'll talk about it, but that very Superman-like presence in the film. Gemma Chan, I really, really enjoyed. Angelina Jolie is Angelina Jolie. Like, who doesn't want to see her be a superhero, right? More on that. Selma Hayek, Kit Harington, Lee McHugh, Brian Tyree Henry, pretty much every single person that was in this film, even side characters. Harish Patel gets a special honorable mention for being hilarious, but that's also because he was side by side, pretty much the Alfred to Kumail's Eternal character. I really liked the cast overall. I thought it was a very diverse and interesting cast. Was the execution always there? We'll talk about that. But I really wanted to give a shout out to many other members of the cast because it was a very good casted film, outside of some other things we're going to mention here shortly. So, Phil, I wanted to make sure to give them their shine. Outside of characters, what else did you like about the movie?
I mean, this is going to be weird because, like, I don't think we hated the movie, but it's also going to be something like you're seeing right now where it's difficult for us to find really, really big standouts that are like obvious. Like with Shang-Chi, it was obvious what we loved about Shang-Chi. With WandaVision, it's obvious what we love about WandaVision. For this, it was just like missing something. I mean,
what about I did want to ask you because we didn't get a chance to talk about this. What about the cinematography? Like, so did you think, because I thought that was a strength. It wasn't always a strength, because we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Yeah. But I thought overall, like especially landscapes and locations, it was a beautifully shot film for the most part.
Yeah, lots of different locations as opposed to staying stationary or between, one and two different spots. But director Chloe Zhao, I think she's kind of known for that. So that definitely shone through. So really, really nice to see like a little bit of globetrotting, while they're trying to gather the whole team together. And, I assume that it is obviously very, very difficult to put this many characters together and successfully get the audience to care about them. And and Eric, this is something you mentioned too on our way out. There are characters here that you certainly genuinely care about. Some certainly more than others, but there wasn't a character that I came away from being like, I didn't care about that person at all. I did get invested in each and every one of their backstories and everything that was going on. But I'm sure that is very difficult. And to a point, they achieve that. So, kudos to them, because again, it has to be incredibly difficult to weave a narrative with this many players in it. Like it's got to be hard.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I would say too, I really like the way they presented the Eternals, because there is that, if you've watched the trailers, but let's say you didn't, everybody's wondering, well, if these people are so damn strong, where were they for Thanos? Like, where were they? And I think they did a good job addressing that and making them have a purpose in the MCU. I think you mentioned this, Phil. It is kind of nice to see in a way. And again, it didn't, I think we're leaning towards that comment. It didn't quite work, but we could be getting the Fantastic Four right now, or getting the X-Men, and they're going into their rogue gallery a little bit further to give us something different. I can appreciate that and value that. The execution, though, is important. And I think Marvel is at a really weird crossroads. I feel like I bring this up in every Marvel review, which for this channel, starting off as a Wonder Woman review channel, and then we threw in Justice League, it's pretty much been Marvel all the way through since, because they've pumped out so much content. Suicide Squad, okay. So it's pretty much a DC and Marvel like superhero review show for now, until we figure out more of a purpose for YouTube or for our live streams. But in the superhero type world, we've been getting, like for movies, we've been getting a ton of films this year. On the Marvel side of things, it's been overwhelming, and I think, like I mentioned, they are currently in this weird phase that's going to make a lot of determinations. Like Spider-Man is it, right? All this movie, and let's kind of transition to dislikes. All this movie did was set up us to be let down by Spider-Man. Like that's all it did, was add more pressure. I mean, did you walk away feeling like that? Did you just feel like, oh, I just wasted 2 hours, 2.5 hours, more than that? It's like one of the longest films.
We went in there at 8 and got out at 11, and because every movie theater now has to show half an hour of freaking previews now. But yeah, it is drawn out, and there are long moments without action. So if that's why you go to these Marvel films, this one's going to be different. So just go in with that expectation. So for me, Eric, if Shang-Chi wasn't as great as it was, and if Black Widow had been kind of because Black Widow is an enjoyable film. Like I went back and watched it for the first time since it came out a couple of weeks ago with my daughter, and it's really, really good. And a lot of it has to do with Florence Pugh and David Harbour. So if not for them, then I would be a lot more worried. But also coming off some of the lackluster Disney Plus shows, like if you guys have been paying attention, or if you guys have been following us, how we've been split on those. And if we had just gotten like a bunch of mid-tier, not up to par Marvel films, then I would be a lot more worried for Spider-Man. I don't share, I think, the exact same worry that you do, but it is there for sure, like what you're saying. For me, Eric, I feel like I think Marvel just has a Thanos problem, where like again, they have to acknowledge why they weren't around for the Thanos fight, and now people are throwing out theories as to I can't get into that because it's a spoiler. So I think they just have a Thanos problem, and they have a problem in trying to find that next relatable leading character. And Shang-Chi was a really good start. I'm hoping people grasp on to Anthony Mackie's Captain America, So I think there's just a bigger problem here, in that where Guardians was very successful in introducing a team that we didn't really know too much about. Remember when we heard about Guardians of the Galaxy, we were like, there's a raccoon on the team. Like we were all like, what the hell?
Vin Diesel's a tree? Huh?
Like all of that works because that character and that idea and those characters are very silly, whereas the Eternals are very serious, and it just didn't like connect the same way that Guardians did. So when they built up like a lot of this goodwill, of course, over the last 10, 12 years, and that's slowly starting to like go away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And on the dislike side of things, let's talk about how lame the Eternals kind of are. So like again, they do a good job because I will be honest, the first half of this film dragged hard, and I didn't know what the buy-in on this movie was. I was like ready to give it like a 3 halfway through. They do a good job with the characters overall. Like I will give them, like Phil mentioned, I'm gonna give them credit. They brought me back and they got me in. Richard Madden, again, great. He's a good actor. They really pulled the Game of Thrones thing here, and I'll get to the other one in a minute. But Richard Madden was fine. He'd be a great Superman. It's almost like Marvel said, hey, I don't know what's going on, why DC doesn't want you, but we'll take you. And then they, they don't hide the fact that he's just a rip-off Superman. I didn't like that. The main character, Cersei, played by Gemma Chan, I didn't really ever buy in that she's kind of like this main force or character or powerful character in the show, in the movie.
Or a leader, right? I didn't
or
really
at
buy
all.
into her as a leader.
No, and they kind of like, there's so much history. There's like thousands of years of history between these characters. And I felt like that fell through the cracks a lot. Like as far as some of the relationships, there were a lot of love stories that were thrown in here. There were like 3 to 4. There was like a love triangle. And then there were 2 other separate love stories as far as like romantic interests. It was a lot to balance. So to Phil's point, while they did get us on some characters, there were others that it was hard to root for or care about. And if you were excited to see Kid Harington in this movie, not not to burst your bubble, but no, that's not the Game of Thrones actor you're going to be seeing a lot of in this film. So overall, Phil, I mean, again, there's a lot that was going against this movie, and I think that it's tough to do a film like this. I hope people go support it, regardless of our grade, because I think people should, especially given the director, the diverse cast, if I could say that word. And, I think it's not a bad film. Like you mentioned, we don't hate it. But
Definitely
what else?
not. Yeah.
What else really did you not like? Because I feel like those were some of our biggest ones. But I mean, I feel like there's definitely more on the table there to chew on because I didn't have a good time.
So it's going to sound like we're contradicting ourselves. And really quick, let's get to this comment here from Stefan. Shout out to Stefan for hopping on. He said, I think the big issue was Thanos was such a good villain and the bar got set so high that it's hard for them to surpass it. And that is correct, because what they did is unprecedented. Like we talk about that all the time. It's never been done before. People have been trying to do it since and failed miserably. So, and they're not necessarily going to do that same formula again. But it is like we have to give us the same type of threat for us to root against. Like maybe Kang will be that, like as far as that character, as far as Jonathan Majors, who got off to like one of the few bright spots of Loki, I think we agreed upon, if I remember correctly. So he was fascinating. So hopefully that will be that character. But yeah, they have, like I said, they have a Thanos problem. So, but what I was going to say is, it's going to sound like we're contradicting each other or contradicting ourselves, because we had just sung the praises of the cast in the beginning, in the first part of this episode, but the characters themselves are kind of boring. Like outside of Brian Tyree Henry and Kumail Nanjiani, not really any of them have any type of charisma about them, right? And we don't need 6 uncharismatic characters to join the Avengers. You know what I mean? And not to say that the Eternals, and not to say that each and every character that we're going to get introduced to so far or thus far or in the future has to be an Avenger, but they have to be likable and they have to be interesting. Like, what was the biggest problem with Captain Marvel? Like, yeah, that character is really, really cool, but she wasn't really made super interesting. And I hope that they fix that in the Marvels, which comes out, I think it's either next year or 2023. You can't add more characters that completely lack charisma and have Brian Tyree Henry and Kumail do all the heavy lifting. It's not going to work. Like, as much as Angelina Jolie's character Thena is badass, like her powers are cool, really, really cool, but she doesn't really have much of a personality other than she has, again, I won't spoil anything, but she's not really necessarily given much of a personality. Cersei, Gemma Chan doesn't have much one. Icarus, again, kind of white bread, like they can't have just 2 characters doing all the heavy lifting for everybody else. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it was really tough. And then, Phil, kind of contradicting ourselves again, like the movie did have funny parts. It also tried to lean into that a little bit too much. Like, I didn't quite know whether or not it wanted to be Marvel funny or if it wanted to be like a serious Marvel movie. And yeah, it was a weird balance. I don't know if you got that vibe, but there were times in that movie where like a serious moment would be undercut by like a joke. And Marvel has that issue in general, but I don't know. It's one of those things that I just think it's really weird that Marvel just continues to do some of these tropes, and they can't watch the end result and really feel good about that, I don't think. But I don't know. It's really just kind of tough to watch because Marvel really does seem like they're just kind of repeating the formula and hoping it sticks rather than what this movie could have been, which, they did try something different, but like they are still doing a lot of Marvel-like things. I think that's pretty tough when you look at it. And I gotta say this, I wanted this movie to be good, but I also wasn't very interested. I don't think the marketing helped this movie at all, Phil. Like,
no, not at all.
At all.
Not at all. Because it was like you weren't 100% sure what the premise was. I didn't even read a synopsis when we started this episode. Matter of fact, now that I think of it, because it was just so far from my mind. You kept seeing the one part, in the trailer where the guy, that one scene we've all seen, like, why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Like, you have to address that question right here in the beginning. Again, going back to the Thanos problem, like I just said. So yeah, again, it's not a bad movie, and I know there's some controversy around it because there is a openly gay character in the film, and again, that's just a bunch of ignorance that we're not going to touch on. If you guys have been listening to us long enough, you know where we stand on that issue. So I do, again, like you said, I do hope people go out and support it, but it's gonna be a rough go, man. I think I gotta be honest here with you, Eric. We'll transition into our grades here in just a moment. I do want to talk about the Rotten Tomatoes score. For those of you that do believe in that, Rotten Tomatoes is like the PFF of movies, right, Eric? Like, I'm just now making that connection. Like, some people believe in those statistics and some people don't. And I think that's a really good comparison. Rotten Tomatoes, 86% audience score. So people are enjoying the film, which is good. 50% for Tomato Meter. So as far as critics go. So take that for what it's worth. People do seem to be enjoying it. And again, we didn't hate this movie, but that's kind of where people are landing right now. So Eric, what do you think? Does that sound probably about right?
Probably. And one thing I forgot to mention, Phil, kind of as we transition, was the CGI. Like, when we talked about visuals, I'd be remiss to not talk about the other side of that, which was, it was very CGI heavy. Like, a lot. So I don't know. It's I don't know. It's just odd why they would go that route, but I guess this is where Marvel's going, right? Like, this is the future because they're going into space and all of that stuff. So I think this will be a good transition to go over final thoughts in our grade. I think that'll be a good start. And I mean, do you want to kick it off, Phil? Because I'm really curious to see where we landed on this.
Yeah, I'll go first here. And before we wrap up, as we're doing these grades, if you guys do have any other questions, make sure you drop them in the comments there, and we'll address those before you wrap up. So yeah, I will go first here as far as my grade. If it will come up, there it is. Okay, so 2021 is going to go down as a weird year for the MCU. It's got some of the subpar Disney Plus shows that we mentioned. Black Widow was okay. Of course, Shang-Chi was a rousing success. Now we get the Eternals and, of course, Spider-Man next month. This is going to go down as an experimental year for Marvel. I expect 2022 to be a bit of a return to form. It's got, we got Doctor Strange, Wakanda Forever, Thor, all those coming out. But if Marvel can't successfully establish new and interesting characters, they're going to run into a problem sooner rather than later. And I think maybe that problem is already here. I enjoyed Eternals, but it's not something that I'm going to see again other than Kumail Nanjiani's scenes. So like, I'll watch them on YouTube a few months from now when they're all compiled into one video. It's by no means a bad movie, like we said, but in the grand scheme of things, it will ultimately be forgotten unless there's a huge payoff coming down the line. What I thought about in the moment, Eric, is that it very much so reminds me of the first two Thor movies. They're very important, but they're also not very good, and you don't really have a reason to go back and watch them. All in all, I still recommend seeing Eternals because, like we said, go support this really diverse and really, really good cast. But for my expectations to already be tempered and to have somehow still managed to be disappointed is telling. So I give Eternals a 6.5 because it deserves somewhat of a passing grade, but the goodwill, as I mentioned, from the Infinity Saga is beginning to dust away itself.
Interesting. So the more, as I was typing out my review, right, just some of my thoughts, I started to dislike this movie a little bit more. So here, as a precursor to my thoughts, so Phil texted me the night that we went to go see the movie, before it started, and he was just letting me know he was on his way. I was so busy. I just sprinted to get ready. I sped to get to the theater because this movie literally left my brain the moment I hit purchase tickets. That's how quickly I forgot that I was actually going to see this movie, is buying tickets for it. So with that said, did I walk away after little to no expectations to this movie? Maybe I left the theater surprised, or that this was some unexpected hit. No, that didn't happen. And despite a strong cast, some beautiful visuals, and an emotional story, the characters are equally boring. The CGI is used too much, and the movie didn't turn out to be as unique as it pretended to be. So, just like the night I went to the theaters to see this, I've already forgotten about this movie, and unless I'm proved otherwise, I don't find this to be an essential MCU viewing experience. So, I would say this movie is a 5.5 out of 10, because I couldn't bring myself to give it a 6, but I also don't think it's bad enough to say it was a 5. So 5.5 sounded like a weird score when I typed it, but that's really how I feel about it, and I don't think I'm going to change that. It might even go down as I talk more. You know what? I might go to a 5. I'm going to leave it there though, 5.5.
Yeah, I was borderline 6, 5.5, 6, and yeah, we really wanted this to be good. And it's so weird. Again, we say it over and over again. It's not bad by any means, but like it's forgettable. It is the definition of a forgettable film. So we got a couple more questions coming in here, Eric, and then we'll wrap up. We have Kire coming on. Shout out to Kire, who actually will be joining me for Monday's episode of Netflix and Phil. We will be talking about Only Murders in the Building, the Hulu exclusive. So make sure to check out that episode. She said, do you think people are too hung up on past movies and expectations that it makes introducing new Marvel characters difficult for people to buy into? Also, Eric, don't forget to shoot the shit.
It's too late, Kire. We were already shooting the shit.
I'm really, really angry. I almost didn't put that comment up there because I knew that was coming because they discussed it and pre-planned it last
we
night.
Did. I said if she joined the live stream, I would say it. Also, if you guys would like to make me your puppet, by all means, come to each live stream and whatever you put in there.
We'll just do whatever you don't even.
I'll just probably do what you ask.
Yeah,
Stefan is in the chat, so we're gonna be careful with that. I'm only doing that one per episode. That one per episode is expired.
Stefan was like aggressively typing as you said.
I guarantee it. Guaranteed it.
Carrie says also, she says thank you. So good job, Eric. But let me put the question back up here. So I don't necessarily think the expectations are too high or people are hung up on them. It's just because there's still a lot of characters to be introduced. I mean, we talked about Fantastic Four and the X-Men. It's just that the characters have to be interesting. So we can buy into like characters like Guardians of the Galaxy because they're charismatic and they're likable. And for the Eternals, there's not really, only like one or two of them are really actually genuinely likable. So I don't think that's necessarily it. But I mean, because there's still characters that people are clamoring for that aren't the X-Men or Fantastic Four, like Namor, Eric. Like, how many people have been wanting Namor? I mean, even a random character like Squirrel Girl is being clamored for. So I don't necessarily think it's a character issue. I think it's just that if they're not being presented in a way that makes them likable, then why should we care? I guess.
Yeah, we brought this up in the What If review. What If didn't get interesting until we knew it was going to tie into the MCU, really. Like, we thought they were standalone stories, and then there was a bigger purpose to it. I walked out of Eternals really not feeling like this movie fit in the MCU. Like, I understand it takes place in it, and I understand they'll probably show up, but like, even the after credit scenes, those were very big letdowns to me. Yeah. And that's what you go to the theaters for. I went to Venom, did not have the best time, enjoyed it much more because of the end credit scene, because I knew there was more to come. Like, even though it wasn't a real like MCU movie, it is, like an extended universe with Sony. So that's what I go to these films for now. I'm just a sucker for it. How does it tie into the overall story? Eternals didn't do a very good job of telling me why it had to be there, as far as a MCU film and what its biggest purpose was. Really, really odd overall.
And then we got another question here coming in from Stefan, and it's a little bit of it's broken up, so I will bring both parts up here. So he says, told Eric that he had lost interest once Endgame finished. Do you think with them not really reaching those peaks right now and the DC universe looking a lot better with the Suicide Squad and the new Batman movie looking really promising, do you think DC may start to creep up and maybe overtake Marvel? I think overtake is too strong of a word, Stefan, but it's a valid question because Suicide Squad, excellent. Eric loves Wonder Woman 84.
I
so
don't. No, I don't. Don't say that. Don't
I couldn't even get through that with a straight face. No, but it is a valid question. We talked about how we're excited for the Flash film. Ezra Miller's kind of weird, but the movie itself might be really good. Shazam was a really good introduction to those DC characters. So that's a valid question. I don't necessarily think that it can overtake it unless something drastic happens. Like if they were okay, Eric, like let's say this is a good question. I'm glad Stefan asked that. If they had gone forward with this Snyderverse, yeah, then that's a discussion.
Story.
That's a discussion to be had. Absolutely.
That would have been a cool direction for them to take that in, and that would have been really dark and edgy and in the way that DC was probably wanting to do it. But they are just so adamant to not acknowledge that existence. They just said, hey, we're going to do what you said. We appreciate what you did. We don't care what the fans think. I will say the Flash movie is going to be a big deterrent for a lot of people if it doesn't turn out good. But if it turns out good, that's going to bring a lot of people back over to the D side.
Like their Spider-Man movie, not their Spider-Man character, obviously, but that's going to hinge on a lot of things. So
a lot of things, right?
That's a really good question. Again, overtake is a little bit too strong, but there is a discussion now to be had because a couple of movies came out this year that are really, really excellent. I got another question coming in here from Philin. Do you think that this has been the weakest MCU phase so far? Yes, but we still have to see Spider-Man. Like if Shang-Chi and Spider-Man are both 9 and 10 movies, then that kind of redeems it, right? Because we didn't really expect a lot of Eternals, and the Black Widow film is basically just like filler, to be honest with you. We got Red Guardian and Florence Pugh out of it, but like that wasn't necessarily needed for the whole overall plot of the story, even though, spoiler alert, it does have Hawkeye tie-ins.
Yeah, and I think weakest is maybe not the right word. I will say that there are definitely some issues, I think, just kind of in the grand scheme of things. But, phase 1 of the MCU also wasn't very strong if you really kind of look back on it. Like, again, calm down, Flynn. Calm down, Flynn.
Did not like Black Widow.
Do not attack.
Speak ill of the dead.
do not attack the Asian community with their hero Scarlett Johansson.
I knew that's what you were gonna say.
Don't you dare. Okay. So anyway, what I would tell you is that with the MCU, this is also a weird phase because when you look at it, we also have like the most content within a phase. If you kind of think about it, it's hard to compare it to the other ones because of all the shows. So if we're just talking movies, I would agree with Phil. If we're including the shows, I mean, it's hard to compare it, but yeah, it would kind of be the weakest because there were a lot of subpar shows. The only show that we were interested in, which I would say is a 7 to 10 or bigger as far as the score we gave, the only show that hit that mark was WandaVision, and we're not very confident Hawkeye is going to meet that. It might be great, but Spider-Man is gonna be a big one. I mean, it's going to be tough. All this movie did, all these shows did over the course of this past year, unintentionally, was put a shit ton of pressure on Spider-Man. So I'm super worried, again, me personally, if this movie is not everything we dreamed it was going to be, I just don't know how I'm going to feel. I told Phil there's a good chance I don't go to Marvel movies. Certain Marvel movies, like a year from now, if Spider-Man's bad in December, a year from now, a movie like Eternals that I wasn't interested to see, I'm probably going to wait till it comes out on Disney Plus. And Phil will tell you, we go to every Marvel movie. We go to every Marvel movie opening weekend, almost every time. I'll probably stop doing that if Spider-Man's not good, to be honest.
Well, I'm going to call your bluff there, Eric, because the movies next year are Doctor Strange, Wakanda Forever, and Thor.
I didn't say, no, but again, I didn't say all of them, but I'm telling you, like, again, I won't watch
like a character you don't necessarily care about.
Like an Eternals movie. Again, if Eternals was to come out a year from now.
Like the Marvels. Like the Marvels.
Yeah, I probably won't watch that if Spider-Man's bad. Now, Spider-Man's good. The MCU's great again. Ooh.
Do I need to finish Loki if I go watch the Eternals? She's asking this because I've been telling her, even though it's not good, you have to finish Loki because of the damn ramifications of everything else. So just finish Loki, and then you can stop asking this question.
Yes, you have to finish Loki before you watch Spider-Man.
Plus,
anyway.
there is, at least in the last episode, there is a very interesting character that we name dropped earlier that I don't know that if you hadn't joined yet, it's so it didn't spoil it. So there is a very interesting character that is very important and will also be in a future Marvel film. So yes, you have to finish it anyway.
Flynn's in the middle of Spider-Man and the Eternals show up. I'm like, shit, I said it wasn't. It wasn't. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're gonna be fine.
Everyone else is in it, so might as well put the Eternals in it.
You're gonna have to watch everything by the time Multiverse of Madness comes in, because that movie is probably gonna be so insane that you probably have to be caught up on everything. Otherwise, who knows what's gonna happen? So that's probably my deadline for you. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, guys. Well,
we did not want to talk about this movie this long, but we appreciate the comments and we love the discussion. That was
really great questions.
All of those questions were way more enjoyable than talking about this movie for like 20, 25 minutes. So thank you.
Sadly agree, but man, Kumail Nanjiani is good. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another live stream. We are going to keep doing these and hopefully get better and better. Again, we would like to expand on the content that we put on the YouTube page. Right now, it is kind of exclusively reviews. So, make sure you check out any of the other films that maybe you haven't seen that we reviewed. I know Suicide Squad is up there. The Snyder Cut, which was a whole lot of fun, really, really great film. A bunch of other movies that we've reviewed here. And the rest of the month of November is jam-packed, Eric. As I mentioned, Netflix and Phil's episode on Monday will be about Only Murders in the Building, featuring Kire, who was in the comments earlier. Wednesday's episode of Illuminati. We decided to do a part 2 of Crazy Conspiracies, Eric. So I don't think I even told you, but our buddy Nighthouse, Landon, will be joining me for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we got, Encanto is coming up in the end of the month. We're super busy. And then, Eric, if you have been keeping up on the podcast, we're going to take a little bit of a break in December, but there's still going to be a lot of content, of course, with Spider-Man and everything else. But if you enjoyed this live stream and you want to find more of our content, you can, of course, primarily find us at the podcast, which can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Buzzsprout, and wherever else you find your shows. Also, make sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram, Wait For It Podcast, and on Twitter at Wait For It Pod. We would really, really appreciate it. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us for this live stream. And Eric, if you want to take it away, we'll get out of here and I guess maybe just go get killed a lot and Back for Blood. That's pretty much what we've been doing a lot.
Also, another, I guess that's why Stefan's watching. Stefan's watching because he's like, are we going to play? That is also an episode. That is our Game Room Where It Happens episode. We're also going to talk about DC and do a bunch of tirades and hot takes on that. So with that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino.
Oh, I did it wrong. We almost had it.
I don't know if you guys noticed this. I'm going to stop my closing really quick, but I was like touching my thing because I was trying to see where my finger was pointing. And I was trying to make it subtle, but because
no one would have noticed it if you hadn't said anything.
If you noticed, shoot us a comment, let us know. But anyway, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new podcast episodes every Monday and Wednesday with the occasional live stream here on YouTube. And all you have to do is wait for it.
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.